The mission of the Institute is to promote ethical, bipartisan, collaborative leadership. And one of the things that we try to do is to collaborate on important issues to the community, and how we elect our city council members in the city of Peoria is an important issue. One other thing by way of background is I served on the Illinois Reform Commission during the last couple of years, and was appointed by Governor Quinn, and looked pretty closely at redistricting. And there were 15 commissioners, and it was a very diverse group. It included Lieutenant Governor Sheila Simon and a whole host of others, but it was a very diverse bipartisan group. And one of the things that we agreed on strongly was that it was important to protect minority voting rights and enhance minority representation in whatever reforms that we were going to put forward to the Illinois legislature. And so I guess if I have any bias, and I'm supposed to be the objective one here tonight, I look at the new 2010 census data, and Pat Landis is going to share more on that. And the truth is, in the city of Peoria, we've seen a significant growth in minority population, both African American and Hispanic. And the essential question is the current system by which we elect council members, 5 at-large through cumulative voting, and 5 district members by 1 person, 1 vote, is that system the right system for the future of the city of Peoria, and does it enhance the potential for minority representation on the Peoria City Council? And one of the things that we're very fortunate about is we have some really good people that have looked very carefully not only at the election results. We have Dr. Larry Aspen, and there's a report that many of you have that has looked back at the history of cumulative voting since its inception in the city of Peoria. And then we have Pat Landis, who has helped lead the charge with the redistricting committee and knows the census data backwards and forwards. And so the roadmap for tonight is Dr. Aspen is going to give the highlights of his report, and then take any questions that you guys might have for him. Then Pat Landis is going to talk about the redistricting efforts to date and the census data. And then I'm going to get up and I'm going to talk about a survey that we have for citizen feedback. And those surveys are available back on the back table. And then again, this really is meant to be a very open, free-flowing discussion. So with that said, we're going to get going with Dr. Larry Aspen. He's the chair of the Political Science Department at Bradley University. So let's welcome Dr. Aspen.
Let me try it without this, okay? Okay, I can only use one hand at a time, okay? Brad posed the question. My task is to give you the background information. What I tried to create for you is a self-contained series of summary statements. You know, what have we learned about cumulative voting 20 years in Peoria? So the big bullets are summary observations. I've been able to illustrate many of them with either events or tables for you to look at. Not all of them are illustrated. The last point in particular, I'm just illustrating with one slide. If you want it, I have a 42-slide presentation on that topic that takes me 2 hours to go through. Some of you may have suffered through that previously. Okay, I'll be happy to send it to you. Just go email it, aspen@bradley.edu. All right. I've organized my comments around what is it, why do we have it, what have been the effects, and basically has it worked? Has it produced the intended effects? Okay. Since this is longer than I had intended, I'm not going to talk about every point. I'm just going to tell you what I tried to do on some of the slides and step through here. The voting system is relatively straightforward. It's used in multi-member districts. We simply get one vote for each seat that's being contested. In the case of Peoria, we're electing 5 at large, so we get 5 votes. The Peoria system, and it's known as the Peoria system in the literature, is very simple. If you vote for one person, that person gets all 5 votes. You vote for 2, your vote is divided equally between the 2, 2.5. Vote for 3, it's 1 3/4, 1 3/4, 1 3/4, or 1 2/3 rather. Okay, so it's really quite simple, and I think the voters understand it. The parallels to simple straight voting, we get the same number of votes to cast. We're using the same decision-making rule, plurality. Whoever has the most votes wins when we're all done. Where it's, whoops, not that fast. Where it differs is how we can cast our votes, okay? Under straight voting, we can only give 1 vote per candidate, okay? Under cumulative voting, you can give multiple votes to each candidate, okay? What we see is a difference here in how you can express your intensity of preference, okay? Under straight voting, if you're in a situation where you have one candidate that you really like and the rest of them are okay, but you really want that one candidate to be elected, okay? The way to enhance the probability of that is just to vote for that one candidate, known as bullet voting. Now, you could vote for more candidates, but that might mean the candidate that you want to win would lose, so you don't vote for them. You just vote for that one candidate. The rest of those votes you put in your pocket and you take home with you. They're not cast. So under straight voting, we've always had this situation where all of the votes that could be cast have never been cast because people were bullet voting. Under cumulative voting, your intense preference can be expressed by giving that one individual all 5 votes in our particular system, okay? People have been bullet voting since we've had multi-member districts, okay? We want to keep that in the back of our mind. Very quickly, cumulative voting is used in a large number of places. We saw a rash of adoptions in the 1980s, a lot of voting rights cases. That's how we wound up with it. Why in voting rights situations? Well, very simply, it is a nice system for a group that is geographically spread out. So we can't draw a district around them and make that a majority-minority district. So it's a great system for a group that's geographically dispersed to be able to elect their preferred representative. Now, it's not proportional representation because there are some requirements. 1, you've got to vote, right? 2, you have to vote cohesively. You've got to vote for a minimum number of candidates, and if you're a small group, usually it's going to be 1 candidate. So you've got to get behind a single candidate, you've got to vote, okay? And you have to exceed what's called the threshold of exclusion, and I'll talk about that later on. You have to be a certain size for this thing to work for you. Okay, that's what it amounts to. Okay, Peoria situation, I think we all know it fairly well. In terms of our at-large seats on the council, no member of the minority community had been elected to that. The first minority community member elected was Jim Polk to a district seat in 1985, I believe. 6 members of the city, 6 residents sued, claiming vote dilution. What they asked for was the system to be changed to a system of 8 single-member districts. The hope was that, well, maybe not immediately, over time, with population shifts, that you could have a good chance of electing 2 minority preferred representatives from those 2 districts, okay? The city countered and said, well, we'd like to keep our 5 single-member districts, but let's elect our 3 at-large with something called cumulative voting, which we had previously used in the legislature for over 110 years, I believe. Okay. The plaintiffs said, that's fine as long as we expand the number from 3 to 5. And so we have 5 districts and 5 at-large, and that's the system we've had ever since. Okay. In terms of its effects, did it lead to an increased interest in more people voting? Short answer, no. Okay. Next question. Yes, we did have a peak of interest in 1991, okay? But then it settled back down. This is the turnout rate as we're moving through the years. I know it's hard to see for those of you sitting in the back. Here's 1987. This is the last year that we used the traditional system where we elected 3 at-large. 1991 is the first year we used cumulative voting in the city, okay? Basically, very quickly, the candidates adapt to it and the voters adapt to it, okay? The candidates realize that they can maximize their chances of winning by getting people to give them multiple votes, okay? Now, I have an example up here from John Morris's 1999 website. I put that up there. I had several to choose from because many people have asked for this. But it's a nice contrast. Here's Morris asking for multiple votes, and that's the year, that's the election, 1999, where Leonard Eunice didn't. He went the opposite way, if you remember, with a phrase something like, give the other guy a vote. Don't concentrate your votes for me. Well, what happened is if we count the number of people who voted for Eunice, he finished 5th, and he would have got a seat on the council. But when we count the number of seats, he finished 6th, and he lost. The reverse was true for Sandberg, okay? When we count the number of people who voted for him, he finished 6th. But when we count the votes, because he had a very, very effective use of cumulative voting, he finished 5th, okay? So the candidates adapt very, very quickly to it. Okay? Voters also change. Okay? One of the overwhelming observations is that we vote for fewer people. Okay? Multiple reasons for it. We won't go into all of them. This is one illustration of it. If we look at the 1987 election, when we were voting for 3 at-large candidates, we were using traditional voting. Okay? But there were a lot of people who were voting for just 1 or maybe 2 candidates. So of all the possible votes we could have cast, we only cast 76% of them. Okay? A lot of people took votes home and did not cast them in that election. Okay? Ratchet forward to cumulative voting, and we do that same calculation, and that percent drops to around 50% in every election since then. We're simply voting for fewer people. We've been very consistent in it too. On this table, we have each of the elections that we have ballot data for, 91 through 2011, and you can see that in the low 30s, always voting for 1 candidate, roughly 20-some% voting for 2. So a little over 50% are only voting for 1 or 2 candidates. They're giving 5 votes or 2.5 votes to each of 2 candidates. Very consistent through the years there. Okay. Everybody is voting for fewer candidates. But there is a difference between majority voters and minority voters. Minority voters vote for fewer than do majority voters under both systems. This was true back in 1987, it's true in 1991, it's true again in 2010, okay? Number of ways we can illustrate this, okay? All right, I've got to set this up. We have your ballots. Okay, we know who you voted for, but we don't know if you're male, female, black, white, young, old, rich, poor. We don't know anything about you. Okay? The only way we can get at that is to turn to aggregate census data. Okay? And the only way to handle it is this way. We group the voters, okay? In this column right here, we have all of those voters who live in precincts where the voting age African-American population is between 0 and 10%. And then the next column, 10 to 20%, 20 to 30%, until we get over here to this column where all of these voters live in precincts where the voting age population is between 80 and 90. Presumably, what's happening as we move from left to right and we look at the percentage of people casting votes, it's an increasingly higher percentage of minority voters who are casting those votes. Okay?